Thanks for joining us. We are here to talk about the collaboration between the telecoms and the financial services industries. And to discuss this, I am delighted to be joined by Monica Sasso. She is FSI EMEA Chief Technologist at Red Hat. Monica, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Charlotte.
So first of all, what can you tell us about your role at Red Hat, given your background in banking, and maybe the crossovers between the telecom and the financial services industries?
Thanks, Charlotte. So I am Red Hat's EMEA Financial Services Chief Technologist. Actually, I'm based in London. I joined Red Hat from the industry, so from Deutsche Bank, because I really wanted to learn about cloud technology firsthand. I wanted to get under the skin of technology and how this wider digital transformation is affecting all of us in all industries. So my job at Red Hat is to partner with our EMEA financial services customers and act as their trusted advisor on their digital transformation journeys and helping them really capitalize on their open source technology investments. If I think about the crossovers between telco and financial services, and I am asked this a lot, especially Monica, why are you coming to MWC, blah, blah, blah. For me, there's a long history, a long, very rich history, going back 150 years actually. So the very first ever wire transfer payment was made via the telegraph on Western Union. And more recently, the last probably 40 years, telephone banking became a thing, and that has given way to what we now know today as mobile banking. But I think the area where everybody is most familiar with and most ubiquitous is really with card technology. So with Visa and MasterCards, every time you touch your card, that is underpinned by the payment rails. And the payment rails are supported by the telco infrastructure to make these transactions happen at the speed of light, quite literally, every time you tap your card. If I can think about more direct collaborations that we see every day across the world, or especially in EMEA, you have Turkcell's PayCell company, and that enables bill payment for Turkcell's customers through their mobile bills. You've also have Movistar Money, which is in Spain, and it's a collaboration between CaixaBank and Telefonica to bring consumer lending in a frictionless manner to the Spanish market. And I think the coolest example for me is actually M-Pesa in Kenya, and they have enabled payments via SMS since 2007 in Kenya, which is a very rural, has a very big country, and it has a very rural ethnic population that is nomadic, really. So without the telco infrastructure to support these payments, some people wouldn't have access to payments. So that's really, really interesting collaboration for me.
Monica, you have just mentioned the case of Kenya. Can you tell us a bit more about how digital services providers and banks can get together to help the underbanked?
I always like to keep things simple, Charlotte, and if quite simply, the digital service providers can bring those financial services closer to these underbanked or unbanked populations. And if we use Kenya as an example, 44% of the population is unbanked, yet 83% of the population have access to the internet. So there's a real opportunity to use the mobile infrastructure to bridge that gap and service those 20 million unbanked folks that have access to the internet. That's a huge market for everybody to capitalize on.
So Monica, why are Red Hat technologies essential in order to deliver this vision?
So I'm going to answer this in a sort of off-piste manner. I mean, at the core of it, Red Hat provides a secure platform for both telco and financial services to operate and innovate against. But when I say I'm going to answer this in an off-piste manner, I was thinking about this question and how we could use both together for the better of society. And it struck me, well, if there is no branch network and there is no history of banking in some of these underbanked societies, why can't we bring the branch to the underbanked or unbanked using the telco networks? And that sounds really simple, but imagine like a branch on wheels. A lot of people are not comfortable with a digital-only bank on their mobile phone, especially if that's your first ever interaction with the bank. You might not trust it. You might not be as literate and might not understand all of the ins and outs. So if we had this mobile branch that we could bring to these communities that would rely heavily on the secure telco infrastructure, how amazing would that be to address this gap around the world?
So Monica, what would you say are the success factors for a relationship between banks and telecoms?
Again, I like to keep things simple. Two things: collaboration and literacy, or education. So for us, especially at Red Hat, collaboration is a huge part of our culture because of our ties in the open source community. But if you think about collaboration between telcos and financial services firms to bring these services and products to anybody, you've got to collaborate together with the regulators to make sure that financial crime is not perpetuating, to make sure that fraud doesn't happen, and to make sure ultimately, that people are delivered safe products. The second element is literacy, and for me there's two parts of that. One is literacy in general, and then the second element is financial literacy. For some people this might be their first bank account, and it might be scary, or they might not understand the repercussions of having a bank account. Equally, if you're a small business owner or maybe a small farmer, the advantages it could bring through maybe microfinance or things like that are phenomenal. And I'm going to pull the financial literacy thread a little bit more and bring it a little closer to home for us here in Europe. Or in the West, I guess, and the US as well, we've sort of embarked on this must-have now economy. This is proliferating, and we can see this in things like the buy now, pay later. And areas like that, the financial literacy thread has to continue to educate everybody else. People get in financial trouble, and we don't want that either.
Monica, what's your final word on this?
Red Hat has a strong history and perspective on supporting the unique requirements that the telecoms and financial services industry have in terms of delivering this safe and reliable infrastructure. So with our hardened open source technologies, we really do allow telcos to develop and deliver these services together and with and for financial services customers and their indirect and direct customers in a safe and scalable and reliable fashion using the open source communities.
Monica, real pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you, Charlotte.